All right, let's fucking get this show on the road. Part 2 of our nonsense FF7 remake discussion. Before we get into that, though, Nick has a answer to our last question that we capped the podcast off with. So, as a reminder, the question was, if you could basically go back and experience a game for the very first time, just all your memories of it are wiped and clean slate. Just play it again as if it was brand new to you. What would that game be?
I'm glad you repeated it because I actually couldn't remember what the question was.
Well,
I was going to ask what it was.
I had to think about it for a while, but without just totally copying you guys, because yours were all great answers too. But I actually decided to go with Skyrim because Skyrim was when it first. I know, like nowadays it's a bit of a joke because it gets ported to everything and stuff, and a lot of people, longtime fans of the series, criticize it for dumbing things down. But like for me personally, it was the first game in that series I played. So any so-called dumbing down, I was just unaware of. So I was able to just completely enjoy it for what it was. And back when we played it, you guys all played it at the same time, and everybody approached the game a little bit differently. So yeah, it was just fun to talk about, and it's not really an experience that could be replicated now. Even if a new Elder Scrolls came out, it just probably wouldn't be the same because it wouldn't be fresh for me anymore. But
yeah,
that would be my answer.
I can see that too, because it was my first one as well as in that series. So another one, I'm sure could be good, but yeah, it's not going to be quite the same.
Yeah, no.
I mean, the way Bethesda's been operating lately, I honestly doubt a new one would be any good because they've been just kind of fucking up everything they touch.
Right, after Fallout 76, and it's just Bethesda just lost a lot of credibility. So, I mean, that doesn't mean it can't be good, but at this point, people are going to be really, they're not going to be quite as forgiving as they were back when Skyrim was a buggy mess when it first came out. Nobody's denying that, but people were a bit more willing to just kind of turn a blind eye to it because it was so great in other areas, and Bethesda hadn't had their big royal fuck up just yet. But
I mean, I don't even know if I would I don't even know if you could really say Bethesda's kind of on the downturn, because to me it seems more like Bethesda's just finally showing their true colors and people are just getting less and less patient with them.
Yeah,
because I don't know if they've ever released a game that wasn't kind of a absurdly buggy mess.
Oh yeah, that's kind of what
they're a bit. Yeah, they're kind of notorious for that shit. But
usually people were a bit more excusing of it, but they're not really getting away with that anymore.
I feel like that was just the product of a different era, because things were just kind of different, I guess, back in the day when that kind of shit was released.
Yeah, nowadays standards have just kind of skyrocketed, so they can't get away with that anymore.
Well, then, I feel like they weren't as popular as they were back then either, so you didn't quite get as many people taking notice of it.
Yeah.
But about the question now of erasing your memory of a game, it's kind of funny to think, because you'd expect me or Nick to pick Earthbound or something because it's our favorite game, but it's because this is why I hate when you first brought this question up, I'm I hate this question. Why would because people expect you to pick your favorite game, and you're well, I like all the memories that I have of this game.
Well, that was just it for me. I'm a lot of those memories are a big part of why I love that game so much. So I wouldn't want to lose that. Skyrim, on the other hand, I have great memories from it, but don't think it would be too negatively affected overall if I lost all of them and just created new ones with it all over again. I don't think it would affect me as much as if you went back for. That's kind of why I picked something not really from my childhood, but from my adulthood. But
yeah, that's what I was gonna say too. Is that it's funny because aside from David's, yours was Katamari, right, David?
Yeah, that was high school.
Still,
kind of
still
on the
old enough, but other than that, we all picked fairly newish games, or at least ones that we haven't grown up with. So I guess that says something to that.
Yeah.
Want to erase a childhood game.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Katamari was still fairly childhood. Like, it was young.
Well, it was like
teens,
we
but-
were in high school, so
Yeah, it was like older teenagers, but
But yeah, well, good answer, Nick. Good answer.
good answer. Good answer.
Let's back to FF7.
Nah,
Roger is no longer with us because he died of boredom last podcast.
I thought he was gonna say something. He just, he didn't even like moderate us or anything.
He popped in and said like 3 things in the middle of
He opened up for us at the beginning, and that was about it.
it.
Yeah.
So we're rolling without him because he's busy with the boy.
With life,
Fuck life.
but
Yeah,
we
we don't have
on the
life.
other hand have no life.
We don't have life, so we can stand here and talk endlessly about video games.
Yeah,
I have a wife, but I
mean-
don't have a life.
it's not like we don't do this when we're not being recorded, anyways.
Right.
Now the
Anyway.
whole internet gets to hear our shitty opinions.
Well,
The 14
they
people that
potentially
listen-
can hear our opinions, but it's a
They
matter of
can. Doesn't
Yeah.
mean they will.
Yeah, it's a matter of if they're going to actually listen.
So where we left off last time was a mess of technical difficulties and the whispers are bullshit. So that so it's about sum that up.
I still don't entirely agree with the whispers thing. Like, I'm kind of neutral on the whispers. Like, on one hand, I find it to be an interesting concept for this remake to do something like that. On the other hand, I brought up like the part with Barrett as an example. It kind of takes some weight away when you're just like, well, they can't kill off these characters. Like, they can't do anything different. But yeah.
Well, I
Oh,
mean
yeah.
that was kind of my problem with. Well, one of my problems with them was just they remove the weight of anything that happens, really, like Barrett
Yeah.
included. And anytime, okay, so I mentioned before that I had no real problems with this game doing things differently, changing things up, just because I don't have that much attachment to the original. So it'd be fine to see things play out a little bit differently. But then the whispers feel like some weird fucking meta commentary about, like, well, one, they seem like they're directly there to, say, well, this is why things shouldn't just be 1-to-1 this time. But at the same time, things start to be different, but then the whispers show up and ruin it and make it go back to be the same anyway. So it just kind of, it pulls the wind out of both sails.
See, for me, I feel like it's more of the concept of the whispers is interesting to me as like these keepers of the story and like try to make sure that things stay on track.
And that would be fine if they were handled
Yeah.
better. But the way they were handled was just such an inconsistent mess.
Well, that was because like I heard people talking about time ghosts before I played the game, and that actually got me very interested because I'm like, what the fuck are these time ghosts? Because I was trying to avoid spoilers, but I'd see like people like bringing up like just trying to keep the plot the same and all that stuff. But there was this one picture I saw that makes me laugh even more now that I understand more. But it was like supposed to be people were like inserting the time ghosts into other Final Fantasies, and they were doing Final Fantasy 9, and it's that part where they're getting on the airship where Zidane just sticks his face in Garnet's butt. It's that part, but before they're she's getting on the ladder, and this time ghost is just like talking to Zidane, going like, "Dude, go up the ladder behind her and stick your face in her butt." I'm just like, what the fuck is this about? Like, it was funny to me, even though I didn't get it. Now it's even funnier now, and I'm like, oh, okay, he's just trying to preserve the story, and the idea of that being integral to Final Fantasy IX story makes me laugh.
Another issue I kind of have with them is like how big of a spectacle they tend to make of themselves, even though they've proven a couple times, like with really small, subtle things, that they don't need to do that. And it seems really bizarre that if their purpose is to show up and redirect events to make sure that they stick to the script, just the fact that they're showing up in the first place and everyone can see them and their effect on the world and no one understands them, so they're reacting like negatively to what they're seeing, it just kind of seems really counterintuitive. Like, okay, if you're here to make sure things progress the way they originally did, wouldn't showing up and announcing yourself as loudly as you do, thus prompting everyone to fight against you, be counterintuitive?
Yeah, that's a fair assessment.
Yeah, but
I just
they're
wanna
some
know if, like,
godlike beings, so their machinations are beyond our understanding.
Okay, Reapers.
I just want to know now that we've like defeated them if they are going to come back, or if it,
That's why
or if like if is there the rest of the part that's going to play out like the original did, or is it actually going to be completely different now that we've defeated the Whispers? Like,
well, that's why I'm kind of reserving judgment on the Whispers until I kind of get the full puzzle put together here, because there's still a lot of things to be answered in the next installments.
yeah,
And
like if they do just never mention him again, and then the rest of the story plays out like normal, then it begs the question: why did they even bother with it? Like, did they literally just shoehorn him in just so you can have some big epic like world-ending boss fight at the end of the first part?
I mentioned my theory was it would, now that they're defeated, it's kind of a way to explain away any plot holes in the original story by just being like, well, it's different now because we're not following the main story one to one, and they don't have to worry about any strange things happening on later in the game. But
I mean,
that's
my
meta.
hope here is that, yeah, the Whispers are just done for and we're not going to see him again. So now, like I said, with potential things changing, now those actual different events can have room to breathe and grow, and we actually will get to see something interesting come out of them instead of just, oh, this isn't what it was originally like, better fix it.
Yeah.
So, like, that's my hope, is that they're just gone and they're just gonna go off the rails and do whatever the fuck they want. Like, I'm
So
sure
maybe,
it's gonna
Well,
still stick to very similar beats
well, maybe we'll
as
see
the
Yeah.
some like
original,
what if scenarios. Like, I think that would be cool.
and I can just about guarantee that they're still gonna kill Eris in this.
Oh yeah,
Like, and they're
that's like a
I think
defining moment.
that's going to be one point where they do like bring some sort of mention of the Whispers and fate and all of that back into play, because I feel like once that moment rolls around, they're going to try to show some sort of message of how no matter how hard you fight against it, there are still some fates you just can't get out of.
I would like that. That's
Yeah, that would be cool.
that's actually very similar to like a concept in like DC comics, or at least used to be. I don't know if they changed the New 52, of like they call it solidified time, because Booster Gold kept trying to like fix things that went bad in the past, but he just couldn't because they're just things that have to happen no matter what. And that I kind of like that concept of like you can't really fix those things.
Hmm.
But my thing is, I guess I have less of a problem with the Whispers and more of the problem of just how much Sephiroth is included in this. And I get it, like he's popular and they probably want to throw him in just because people go nuts for him. But I feel like it takes away a lot of his weight by
Yeah,
not even just
absolutely.
behind
having
him.
you. Well, like it's already bad enough that you fight him, even though that fight was pretty fun. Like that just seems stupid because like he's supposed to be the ending boss. So I mean, who knows if they're going to change that later on or what? But
I'll get into that. But
there's supposed to be like this mystery to him for a long time, or at least a while in the game before you even actually see him. Because like I don't think you don't actually see him until like Cloud's like flashback story, and then you don't see him in like the current timeline until way later. It kind of takes away all of his mystery.
I mean, as stiff and stilted as I found the writing in the original, and translations probably a
Yeah.
lot to do with that. But the Sephiroth buildup was done very well because, yeah, you don't see him,
Yeah.
but you see the aftermath of him time and time
And
again. You get
everyone
to,
talks about the fucking snake. That's
Yeah,
always a point for everyone.
and you just can't really do that anymore, especially because they just did the biggest fucking ass pull in Remake of just, oh, well, I'll say they could have still gotten away with things somewhat if all you ever saw were brief glimpses of him. But then
Yeah.
just at the very end, it's just like, Aerith's just like, oh, well, Shinra's not the real bad guy. He is. And then there's fucking Sephiroth right there. And it's like, remember me?
Yeah. And then there's that like weird cryptic ending too, where he's like, you have 7 seconds and all that. That's apparently supposed to mean something, but I don't fucking know what it means.
They went, oh, fuck. I can't remember what it was. Like, I watched a Easy Allies thing where they were talking about some of that, and I want to say they mentioned what they thought that meant, but I don't fucking remember what it was, and it was probably something dumb anyway.
I mean, I'm trying to avoid other people's opinions because that does tend to, like, as soon as I hear it, even if I don't agree, I'll start to think of it. So I really don't want to see any of the stuff until we get through the entire game.
Yeah, I mean, I watched it after I'd already finished, so like I'd set my opinions, and then I kind of went hunting around for like some of the other information because I never played a lot of the like FF7 compilation stuff, like before Crisis and
Yeah, I've never played.
Crisis
The only extra thing I've seen is Advent Children. I haven't played any of the extra games.
You never played Dirge of Cerberus? Because that would be the only
No.
one I've played, which
I
wasn't
never
that
played
great
that
of a game.
I
Well-
played it, but I don't remember fucking anything from it.
Mark said
I don't remember the story at all. Hell, I couldn't even tell you where it takes place. But
It
Mark
takes
said
place
Crisis
in
Core was pretty good.
It takes place in Edge City, which is basically the same. If I remember correctly, it's Edge City, and it's basically the same place that Advent Children took place in, which is like the outskirts of Midgar, where they started rebuilding slums and stuff.
Seems funny that you'd rebuild slums.
Well, like they're obviously not rebuilt into like straight up
Yeah,
ramshack
make
slums,
them
but
shitty. Just for aesthetic reasons, we like it this way.
well, there was something in this remake that like Aris was really defending just the slums to the like, not just being like, oh, well, this has been my life, this is what I know, but just like straight up being like, no, the slums are great. Just seemed a little weird to me.
I mean, just kind of given her personality and how the people of the slums basically saved her life. Like,
Yeah.
I understand the attachment there.
Well,
And
yeah, no, I get that, but she was like making it seem like they should, like, these people don't need to ever have a better life. It's just the slums are good the way they are.
Well, that was something that was kind of interesting about the remake, is you never really saw how like down on their luck people in the slums are supposed to be.
You kind of do, but not this one really expands on that.
Well, this one, because you actually see like the upper level where the upper class people live, and you get that contrast. You don't really get that in the original at all, because you basically spend the entire thing in the slums until you go to the Shinra building.
Well, like what I mean by that is, yeah, you do get the contrast there because you get to see the upper class houses and shit, but then you go down to the slums and you really don't see a whole lot of people who are just like out and out bummed, like their lives are shit. Like no one really behaves as though they're living in slums. They're just like happy as a fucking clam going about their daily lives. Like there's not really a problem. Like they're living in shacks, but no one really seems to care. The only place you ever
in the older game,
the only place you ever really see anything weird is in Wall Market, and that's more just you see the seedy alleys and shit. But what was it, Sector 5? Is that the one where, which is the one where the Seventh Heaven is? Oh yeah, Sector 7. Duh.
Sector 7.
Yeah.
That's why. But yeah,
I've done the same fucking thing.
Like as you're going through Sector 7, you don't see homeless people, you don't see people down on their luck. Everyone's just fine. Sure, they're living in shacks, but no one really seems like they care.
They know their place and they're content.
Well, I mean, it might be like this whole indoctrination kind of thing. They've spent so much time in these slums, they just assume it's a good thing.
I don't know if it's so much that. I think it may be slightly misguided writing, just because, usually you see that a lot in stories that involve poor areas where, everyone does their best and tries to be happy. But usually you do see some of that, like, slum hard life creeping through the cracks of their facade. You just don't really see it in FF7 Remake, though. That was something I thought was a little odd. Like, and I think the only time they ever really mention their disdain for the upper plate citizens is like after the plates start coming down, and then they're just kind of like, oh, those upper plate assholes, they're just leaving us down here to die. Oh, fuck them all. Which, understandable, but that's really the first time you see anyone giving that much of a shit about the class distinction.
Right.
I think it's mostly because, like, in the first game, or like in the original, that wasn't really important to the story, and they didn't exactly have time to convey it either, since they kind of had to move things along. But now that you get this game that is focusing much more on just that part, they can really expand on that.
Yeah.
So, shit, what was I gonna say? I had a thing. Fuck.
You were going to say how cool I am?
Andy, you're the coolest.
I'm the coolest.
So one thing, I don't know if, you guys, I'm sure, remember more of this with, like, the whole Sephiroth clones. Has anybody ever really been mentioning if the Sephiroth we fight in Remake is one of his clones or not?
I think he is. Well, because there's the time where he was falling from a building or whatever, then he kind of disappears, but then you just see one of his clones falling. I think he just kind of, since all of his clones technically have his cells, or they're connected via the Mako or the life stream, so he could maybe just has the ability to just take them over whenever.
See, there's that.
They implied like an illusion kind of thing going on.
Yeah, I think that might have just been a thing even in the original, though. Like,
that was always my assumption. That was always my assumption with the original, was every time you saw Sephiroth up until the very end, it was just one of his clones. And, like, they're not true clones, they just have his cells.
Yeah.
But they're not even, like, acting out his will. It's just they are him. Like, anytime he wants from his little spot in the crater, he can just assume direct control of this form, and then everybody perceives it to look like Sephiroth. It basically is Sephiroth because it's his mind doing it in someone else's body.
Well, there is like I forget how many, if it's more than once, but I remember there being like at least one time where he kind of takes control of Cloud, so that would make sense.
And Cloud's a failed Sephiroth clone.
Yeah,
because Mako is literally just the life stream of the planet, and during the one flashback where Cloud kind of kills Sephiroth, he throws it basically into a Mako reactor. So maybe Sephiroth kind of didn't necessarily die. He just kind of traveled through the life stream until he ended up in the crater, which is where probably the majority of the life stream congregates. And then since all the soldiers and failed Sephiroth clones that have his cells, they're probably still connected to him via the life stream or the Mako or whatever, or even just regular soldiers. So that's probably how he can just he just has the ability to take over anything he wants and do
that part of him falling into the Mako reactor and then winding up at the crater, that basically is canon. But the reason I bring it up is just because the one you fight is in the weird little whisper realm, and the point they really seem to be driving home so far is that Sephiroth has become like almost a singularity or something, just due to the events of the original game and Advent Children. So it makes me wonder if like that is the actual Sephiroth this time, just Advent Children Sephiroth, because you don't kill him.
Yeah, like it's clear that like you defeat him, but he's not exactly stopped.
Which again just kind of goes more back to the point of you don't show the monster this much.
Yeah, I still stand by. It could have just ended with that highway part, and that would have been a great ending. I forget if I
agree.
I forget if I mentioned this.
I would have preferred that too. The only thing is, like, then it wouldn't have ended on like proper combat, which some people might have a problem with.
I think you could still do it.
That part was so good, anyways. Like, I haven't. I don't think I got a chance to talk about this last time, but I just wanted to mention because I figured this part was going to be like the Shinra building part was going to be cool, but that whole ending, like from like as soon as you're done, like in Hojo's lab till like you get on the highway, like the whole fucking part is just cranked up to 11. Like when you fight the Arsenal, which was a pretty whatever boss battle in the original game, like was pretty fucking cool in this one. And then
I did so bad on that fight.
I like it was kind of like back and forth for me on this one, but like
It took me halfway through the fight to like figure out what I was actually supposed to be doing this time, and I'm like, oh shit, I'm an idiot.
I just love it though because it's so fucking like just things keep ramping up and like just shit's exploding and they're just like, well, we gotta get the fuck out of here. And like when they get like stopped in the lobby and then like Cloud comes in on the motorcycle and like I love that they actually showed that they do have like this like the actual like just exhibit of the cars and the motorcycles to explain.
Oh god, yeah. I wanted to mention just how I fucking loved the Shinra Museum aspect.
Yes,
Yeah,
That was done so fucking well.
I think the whole
Yeah,
Shinra
it
building
explains so much of the world's lore and stuff.
that was like my favorite part of the game was the whole Shinra building. It just and then I mean when you're on the fucking highway, like that part's already pretty cool in the old game, but you know it's limited to its time. But this one, it's just like it's like straight up just action movie, just awesome shit. And when it got to the point where you can see like the I don't even remember what the name of that boss is. The weird like what?
I can't either, but like yeah, I know what you're talking about though.
But like it gets to the point where like you're driving, you finally you fought all these guys, and then you like see the thing on the side coming up, and like I think like Barrett like has a reaction to it or something. But like when I was playing and like that happened, I was just like, oh yeah, let's fucking do this.
I think well, going back to the Shinra exhibit, I went back after finishing it and rewatched just a YouTube video of all of the FF7 cutscenes, and funny enough, that exhibit actually is there in the original. Like if you watch the cutscene, it's basically the same thing. It's just a bunch of like the evolution of Shinra vehicles and stuff through the era. That's what they take from.
Mm-hmm.
But like they just did such a fucking good job recreating that and just getting that weird corporate exhibit feel going.
Oh God, yeah,
it was a really nice touch.
Excuse me. The tour, like the walking tour thing, was like it's hard to explain. It was really interesting to see that, like you said, just kind of the corporate history shit. Yeah.
Well, I do like how it kind of it showcases like how Shinra's they're making themselves out to not really be the bad guys. How they're basically the same as the Ancients. How they've developed a way to utilize Mako, make lives more comfortable. They're just like, no, the Ancients did this too. Does that maybe imply maybe that's what happened to the Ancients? Maybe they used the live stream, aka Mako, too much, and like that's what led to their downfall. Because is it ever really explained what happened to them? I mean, I know like they summoned, like I think somebody
Genova had a lot to do with it, like their downfall. She basically crash landed on whatever the planet was called, and for the most part wiped them out. And then the few that were left like split off, and the faction that splintered off became just regular humans, and then the ones that stuck together died out.
Man, I've been meaning to replay the game because I kind of want to see some of this stuff again because I have forgotten a lot of the later stuff. It's kind of more vague memories at this point.
It's a little fresher in my mind just because I made it a point.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, okay, what the hell is different here?
Well, yeah, I was trying to look up some differences because there's some I know right away that are different, and there's a few other things like that I was going through the game and I'd be like, wait, was this in the original? I can't remember. That I'm just getting older to the point where I'm just forgetting shit all the time anyways.
Right.
But going back to the point of they just wanted to have some sort of big flashy final boss. I think there are other ways they could have done it without literally killing a god. Like the fucking road roller thing, you could have either had the bike segment where you beat the shit out of it, and then you get to the end of the highway, but it's still not dead.
That's what I thought was going to happen.
Or they could have, instead of having Rufus as like a boss at the Shinra Tower, he could have showed up to try and stop you from escaping Midgar or something.
They could have thrown in like a big Turk fight, because you never fight what's the leader's name? I can't remember his name.
Sang or something.
I always read it as Sang, but I feel like they pronounce it as Sung in that game.
Yeah, I think they pronounce it differently from how I always read it. But
yeah, like they could have thrown in like a little extra Turk fight there, like because they could have
never fight him in the original either, do you?
What?
You never fight him in the original either, do you?
I don't think so, because like
Elena, but I don't remember.
Like, until you get out of Midgar, right?
Wait, what?
Elena, the other Turk.
Yeah, you don't fight her until after Midgar. So
okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah, but yeah, I have like my suggestion for what they could have done to just have some big like world-ending bosses, because like that Genova fight in the Shinra building, that wasn't there in the original. I mean, you do fight those Genova things, but not until way later. So I figured they should have taken that and possibly just moved it to the end of the.
Well, I think the implication
they
is
could
that
have scaled that up to this big world-ending god-eating thing, and then that could have been. I mean, it would have basically been a throwaway battle, but I mean, arguably the Whisper thing kind of is too. And at least this really would have tied in with the main story a lot better.
That really could have worked, because it was like, if you like read the description of that Genova thing, it's talking about how it's like creating illusions. So you could have had that, and then it could have like created the illusion of like this Whisper boss too, and then it would turn out that actually like you weren't really fighting the real Whispers or something like that.
Yeah,
I don't know. That might have been a bit weird. I feel like they could have done something else with Roche, which they did one fight and then he disappears completely. I have a feeling we'll be seeing Roche again in the sequels.
Yeah.
And as a concept, I like that he's there, because I don't really remember ever seeing any other soldiers in the original, or like
they weren't like named characters so much, because I feel like there was random enemies that were called soldiers, and they had the same basic fighting stance as Cloud and stuff, but I'm not sure if they were like legit soldiers at all, and they certainly didn't really play any part in the main story.
Well, like that's kind of why I like
exactly
Roche's inclusion in concept, because it shows that there are other higher ranking soldiers, like, because you fight a bunch of the little weak, like, no name low rank guys on your way into the Shinra building, but it's a weird idea to have that entire like faction, and then you've got your very unique characters like Sephiroth and Zack, but then no other soldiers that really match anywhere close to their level. I think Roche was a nice inclusion, because he shows that there are just some standouts in the group.
Yeah.
Well, didn't they like stop like the soldier program or something? So like there might not be a lot of them left anyways.
I'm not sure. Like, did they mention like they ended the soldier program?
I can't remember.
Maybe that's another reason to actually play the original again. So
I feel like it's like implied that they like stopped making soldiers or something, but I can't quite remember. Like I said, it's been a while since I played the original too.
I feel like they didn't, just because you're still fighting other soldiers, like low rank guys.
Yeah.
And they do seem like they're pretty mass produced, so it would be weird that there would be that many of them still around if they cut the program. But I don't know. I don't really remember as much the original to definitively say that.
I did love the shit with Roche, like when you see him or like after the bike part, where basically an entire giant battle stops just so Cloud can have a one-on-one fight with him.
And I just like how everybody's just like, oh god, no, it's him.
Yeah,
it's a nice bit of world building of just, there are other high-ranking soldiers, and some of them aren't so well liked.
Yeah. It says a lot about the character in such like little action and so short a time too.
Which is why it's a shame that he had his moment in the limelight, and then he was just like gone. Like
Yeah,
he should have showed up during like the final road.
yeah, they could have used him
He could
there.
have just showed up, even if he was just another random guy. He could be kind of like a sort of mini boss before you fight the huge tank thing, but you fight him on the bike still.
Yeah.
I mean, he could have showed up there, and he could have been the final boss of the game because he is a soldier and he is supposed to be really fucking capable. So
yeah, because I could totally see this scenario where like he shows up and like he's like, oh, I'm not goofing around anymore. Suddenly he gets real serious and he's like a major threat.
Or maybe since he's a soldier, he has Mako in him. Maybe like he'd be like, oh, that means Sephiroth can do his weird Sephiroth clone thing.
Yeah, fuck
And
that.
like,
I mean,
he could have been turned into this big pseudo Sephiroth Roche thing, and then you could have fought that.
yeah, they've already
No,
blown their
Square
fucking load
Enix-
and shown that, oh, here's Sephiroth, so why the fuck not?
Square Enix, hire this man.
Oh, God.
Hire this man as a writer. God. Ugh. We know your game's
Square
better than you.
Enix, hire this man.
The thing is, sometimes I wonder if I do know like some of these games better than the creators do.
Well,
Because like
There-
the
that's-
creators probably have long
that's-
since moved on from it, but I still play them regularly.
that's opening up a whole other can of worms as far as the internet's concerned of toxic fans. So,
Right. And like I don't know if I want to get into that. But like, that's another theory I had. Maybe like the Whispers are an analogy for like toxic fans who.
That's exactly what I've been fucking saying.
I think everyone's
Exactly what
thinking
I've been
that.
fucking saying. They're
Mhm.
that's one of the things that bothers me about them is, one, I think they were handled very sloppily. Two, I think they're this weird fucking meta commentary about how things don't always need to stay the same to still be good and still be valued, which you don't need weird fucking meta commentary like that to say. Just do it. Just do it, and if you do it well, the fans will accept it.
Yeah.
Ugh. Also, did this bother anybody else? But at the very end, before you go into the Whisper dimension to fight them, Cloud starts getting ready to walk in there, and Aerith is just like, no, wait, don't! And she casts some spell on it, and the portal turns white and, like, pretty, and then they never say what she did. Because the whole party goes to that
she
same
probably used
portal
the
anyway.
white materia, and that was like summoning Holy, like she does at the end of the game or that she does right before she gets killed in the original. But again, like, why would she bust that out that early?
It was just such a fucking weird moment, because, like, oh, here's Sephiroth showing up to be like, hey, why don't you come kill Fate for me? Which, again, why does the party decide to do it when they've already decided that Sephiroth's evil? But then she casts this spell, turns the portal white, no one says a damn thing about what that did, and then Cloud is just like he half references it, but not really, because he's just like, why did you stop me? And she's like, I don't know. And she seemed genuinely surprised herself, so it didn't seem like she intentionally did whatever the hell it was she did. And they just don't say what she did. It's fucking weird.
Remember that.
That stuck out to me so hard, and I'm like, what the fuck just happened? What did that do? It bothers me.
Yeah, my guess is it has something to do with like Holy and the white materia and stuff. But again, like, why is she busting it out that early?
And like, why does no one say? Why does no one say what that did? It's weird.
Oh, man. No idea.
It's just kind of Final Fantasy. People do just tend to just accept things.
And here's something we have not covered at all. Zach.
Oh, yeah.
Because he's alive now?
I don't know. It was the implications were a little weird. I thought that was
I don't know.
like a weird
I felt
flashback.
like maybe that was just supposed to be a flashback. But
here's my take. So the Whispers are, like I think Sephiroth is, something that transcends time and space. So when they were going fucking madhouse on the Shinra building, like, they were doing it to such a gigantic scale that it was basically affecting that little column of space through all points in time. And that's why we were seeing that little cut to the flashback of when Zack was supposed to die. Because that was his final moments. Like they basically took that from was it Crisis Core was the game that you played as him?
Yeah, I never played that one, but
I didn't either, but I looked up a rundown of the game, and that cutscene there is basically a recreation of his final moments in that, and instead of him just getting filled full of holes and dying, he survives and then takes Cloud off to Midgar. And because you kill the Whispers, they die in that point in time too, so they can no longer stop him from surviving. Thus, he's now alive, but I don't think that's the same timeline. I think it's a splintered timeline.
Maybe now we're going to see DLC, and it's going to be you can play through the whole game as Zack.
I'm thinking we're going to get something a little different. I'm expecting what's going to happen is in the sequels, we're going to start to see like FF8, those parts where, you know, Squall would fall asleep and he would dream about playing as Laguna and his boys. I think we're going to see something similar to that.
Or like at certain parts, it'll just kind of cut to Zack's story. Like who knows? Maybe the sequel will cover the events of Crisis Core too.
I don't know if it'll go that far. I'm expecting we're gonna see basically the next game is gonna be like a half and half of the current timeline as things are now, and the alternate timeline where Zack is now alive. And we're probably not going to see any direct convergence of the two. Like, Cloud's never going to meet the currently living Zack, but they're going to have weird little, like, visions and, like, dream communication through the live stream or some fuckery like that.
Yeah.
And then eventually, I have a feeling they're not going to formally converge until Eris dies. And, like, then they'll become fully aware of each other. Like, they still probably won't meet, but I think it's going to drag all the way on to that point. Then there's going to be some weird-ass fucking, I don't know, whisper dimension level weird shit going on. And then that alternate timeline is probably going to fade just due to something that happens. Maybe
that's how, like, the second part's going to end. Maybe they'll have a big, like, thing where maybe you fight the end boss as both Cloud and Zack, and then, like, you have to beat this to kind of do away with whatever the quote-unquote wrong dimension is.
Maybe.
And then, like, yeah, it'll end, and then they'll probably tease the next part then. I don't know.
Also, as far as how many games we're going to get, I'm guessing 3 just because everybody likes to do a trilogy, but I don't see them doing any more than 4.
Yeah, no, I think if they did do 4, that might be pushing it a little bit, because I mean, think about how long that would take. We'd probably be waiting probably over a decade for this to finish up.
Yeah. Well, they did pick a really fucking weird time with this, and here's another prediction I'm going to make because of it. So, Remake came out basically tail end of the PS4's lifetime.
Yeah.
And there's no fucking way they're gonna do like the next game exclusive to PS4. At best, it's going to be PS4 and PS5. So it's a really awkward time for them to have released the first game, because now the next game is basically going to have to be on the next gen console.
Yeah,
which
absolutely.
I'm guessing they're going to re-release Remake on PS5 once.
Oh yeah, I fully expect them to. Like, they might just, maybe it'll be like I want to say that they would make it a budget title, but they probably won't. It'll probably be full priced. But
I'd say $40 at best. But you are probably right. It will more likely be $60.
I mean, especially since apparently like next gen games are going to be $70 now, like as the norm. But I mean, that's a topic for another podcast. So, but
no, here it is. It sucks.
But like, yeah, speaking of how many parts they're going to be, like, where do you think like the next part's going to end? Like, I kind of have my own theories.
God, I don't even fucking know, because
I've been wondering about that for a while.
That really depends on how.
It'll probably end when Eris dies. Like, and like the Temple of the Ancients is probably going to be like the final dungeon, similar to the Shinra building. and they'll
Like,
probably scale all that up.
everyone keeps saying that they're probably gonna end one with Eris dying. I'm like, that would be such a bummer way to end one of them. Like, I feel like you gotta end it somewhere else.
Uh,
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't put it past them to just have a really bummer cliffhanger ending, though.
I mean,
Like-
look at it this way. Look at it how a season of a TV series tends to end itself. It tends to end on a significant moment that has far-reaching consequences, but it's not ready to answer what those consequences are. So, in that respect, an event like Eris dying is a like perfect cap to one of these parts. Like it checks all the boxes narratively. Yeah, it may be a fucking huge downer, but it checks those boxes of how you would cap off a season.
And then, like, the other question is, if not there, then where else? There really isn't any other parts, like, that I can think of that would, I mean, except for maybe like the Northern Crater stuff. But I think that would be pushing the second part too long, and there wouldn't be enough left for the third part. So,
Well, it all depends on exactly what beats they're gonna follow for the next parts too.
yeah, then again, you're right. Like, how much of the same is it going to be? Because, like, now that we've killed Destiny or whatever, like, who knows? It might just be completely different.
Well,
But I doubt it'll be completely different because they'll probably still go to the same places and the same stuff, or at least similar stuff will happen. But
well,
yeah,
and here's another interesting point that could affect that is how are they going to handle a world map? Or
I don't think they're going to have a world map. It's probably just going to be either like Final Fantasy X, picking it from a menu, or maybe like best case scenario would be like FF15, where it's like all kind of there. But I think that would be a bit too big of a scale for that, though.
Yeah. Well, one thing that was kind of funny about FF10 was that if you actually pay attention to it, the world is interconnected for the most part. Like, you can start at one point and get all the way over to another point just by going through screens. It's faster to use the airship, but for the most part, things are technically connected. So that's
maybe we'll do something
interesting.
similar with FF7 then.
But I don't know. I think you're probably right in that they won't do like a full world map. It's probably going to be large zones that you'll travel to by airship, which will effectively be a menu.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you shouldn't even be getting an airship in the next part, at least, because you don't get the Highwind until way later.
God, yeah, you don't actually get it until after Eris dies, or
you get the buggy from Saucer and then the tiny Bronco.
You basically use the tiny Bronco to get to like the Temple of the Ancients and stuff, if I remember correctly. And then from there, it kind of goes into that's right. You don't get the Highwind until after the Northern Crater stuff.
Yeah.
So
they're gonna have to find some way of doing some sort of fast travel, because like an FF15 style world map is the best I can see them doing, but even that was a really small scale world.
Yeah,
and
that was like just like a basically
you were traveling between two nations in that, and they were pretty small nations at that. So like with FF7, you are literally globetrotting.
World.
I just want a world map to run around on. That's all I want.
Unfortunately, a lot of people see that as a dated concept, though, and that's something that they're trying to do away with.
Call me a fucking boomer, then, because I love world maps to run around on.
Yeah, don't get me wrong, I love world maps too, but yeah, they're just kind of a dying breed, and given the kind of sort of more realistic nature of the remake, I think it would be a little out of place.
Actually, I take it back. I'll put it this way. Because each part is going to have to be fairly focused, I could actually, now that I think about it, see them doing an FF15 style world map, because it's going to have to be so focused. Like, you got the opportunity to travel like pretty far across the globe in FF7 without the airship, but with each part having to stay focused to a particular story beat and specific areas, that kind of world map actually might work.
Yeah, the counter argument to that is, though, like if the second part does take place or does end with Eris dying in the Temple of the Ancients, you do in fact travel between like 2 or 3 different continents.
I mean, there's
She doesn't die in the Temple of the Ancients.
Well, I'm saying with the Temple of the Ancients, I still believe that's probably going to be like the final dungeon of sorts.
Oh, I thought you were saying that she dies there. I'm like, that's not.
No, I know she doesn't die there, but like I'm thinking that's still going to be like the main, like the end game is basically going to be the Temple of the Ancients, and it's going to lead into her dying.
Well, like basically, there's a way you can handle that by having like separate map instances for the areas that you travel. So like you'll focus on one chunk of the map and go in the areas there. Then it'll cart you off to the next map, cutting you off from the previous map unless they give you some sort of way to travel back.
Yeah, you can just make it so you could go back to Costa del Sol and travel back to Junon that way.
Yeah, like now that I think about it, I think an FF15 style map makes sense, just cordoned off into smaller map chunks that you'll have to travel between each of those chunks.
Yeah, that would be cool. Like I would prefer that over at, just picking places from a menu.
Yeah, or just short pathways to run between each area.
Mm-hmm.
So I have an important question. How are they going to handle Sid swearing?
He's probably going to just be toned down. I mean, even Barrett swore a lot, at least in the English translation, and they toned that down a bit without affecting his character that much.
Well, here's the reason I ask, because with Barrett, like he swore in the original, but like not like the real quote unquote naughty words. But Sid, on the other hand, was saying more of the naughty words, which includes shit, and shit has since been dropped from that list, and it's now a lot more acceptable to say. And that was a lot of what they bleeped out when Sid was saying. They don't bleep out any of those words anymore. So what is Sid gonna do?
I don't know.
What's gonna be his gimmick of how much he cusses?
I would love if they just gave him an audible bleep. And like you just blinks yourself.
Or maybe they could do like Brutal Legend style where you can choose if you want it to bleep or not.
Yeah, oh my god, that'd be great. Dude,
I would honestly play with the bleeps.
I wanted to say some real bad shit, like just shit that I'd never even heard. Like, I hope they just go nuts with that. Like, I'm actually excited to see Sid. I'm wondering about Yuffie and Vincent though. Like
I would guess they're probably going to be like required characters now. Just giving away that
to the plot, like especially Vincent. Like Yuffie kind of plays a bit into Wutai, but it's still not an important story part anyways. They could just be skipped over.
Well, like here's the thing about that though, is with how much voice acting there is and how integral characters are to the cutscenes, it's getting harder and harder to include optional characters like that, because you have to basically write some sort of way for them to be involved in the scene if you have them, or how's the scene going to play out if you don't. And like with I know I've lodged the complaint against Mass Effect of how it's easier than they're letting on to handle the whole you have all these choices thing, but Mass Effect is a very different beast just in the way it does its cutscenes and its dialogue, because a lot of it's just two characters standing there talking back and forth. This
is a bit more dynamic.
Yeah, this is a hell of a lot more involved, because these are big fucking production cutscenes that you're dealing with. It's a lot bigger of an endeavor to do that.
Yeah, so I thought about that a lot too. I'm wondering if Yuffie and Vincent probably won't be optional anymore, and there are probably going to be less opportunities, if any opportunities at all, to actually choose your party members. They'll probably change things around just enough so that you have to bring specific people to specific events, so they can handle the cutscenes that way without having to reanimate them several times.
I don't know if they're going to do it that way. On the note of not being able to change party members, that was something that drove me fucking up the wall in Remake, because there were multiple points where you had all 4 playable characters, but you were still stuck with the party as it was. So like Barrett would just be shoved off to the side or whatever, because it's a 3-person party and you've already got Tifa and Eris. So it's like, let me rearrange my party. But I think I hope they're gonna let you change party members, like active party members, in and out. But if they do, I'm thinking they're gonna do like an FF10 style thing where the whole party is traveling together, but only the active party members are the ones who show up in battle and like follow you around and whatever.
That could work.
Which, as far as the battle system is concerned, if they do that, I bet we're gonna see another like ATB use of, if you've got a charge and that party member's just not right for the situation, maybe you could spend a charge to swap someone out, kind of like you could in FF10.
Which is also similar to how 10 was, yeah.
So
yeah, that would be cool. And also, yeah, it would open up a whole mess of possibilities for strategy too. You can have one character maybe apply some buffs and stuff, and then brings another one in, and that'd be cool.
Well, and that alone would address my complaints of not always being prepared for a fight that you have no idea is coming.
Yeah.
Because then just set up each of your party members to serve specific purposes, and if they're not in the active party at that time, well, spend an ATB gauge to swap the right person in and then finish the fight. There you go.
Yeah,
there's something that 10 did very well.
On the note of party members, I have another prediction. I predict that Kate Sith will be zero fun to play as.
It will fucking work at all.
It will disappoint me because I want to see how he ends up playing, but I bet you he is going to be the character that no one likes playing as, because he's going to have some shitty gimmick that makes him no fun.
The twist is that he's going to be the most fun to play as.
I would take that.
I'd be cool. Like, people like really hate on Kate Sith and say he's this annoying character. Never really found him that bad, especially when you know that he's controlled by Reeve, who's like this much more reserved person.
I never had a problem with him, and like my prediction has nothing to do with like any hate towards the character itself. Just looking at the character design and like his weapon and everying, just
megaphones.
I don't know how that's going to translate to the current combat system. So I'm making the prediction that he's going to be the one character that nobody likes playing as.
I mean, they switched up a little how Eris plays, so they could always kind of tweak him to make him work.
Yeah, maybe they can change up his design a little bit too, to maybe be a bit more like agile and stuff.
Hopefully, but as it stands, I'm expecting him to be the cat of the group. Just gameplay wise. Character, he'll probably still be fine, but gameplay wise, I don't know. I'm worried.
I just want to see Vincent, because I feel like and I wonder if he'll be voiced by Steve Bloom. So they don't seem going with the other voices that they've used, like in Advent Children and stuff.
Yeah, they'll probably come up with someone else, because none of them have the same voice anymore, I don't think.
Yeah, I would expect him to have someone else, but I bet he'll be pretty fun to play as.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, imagine him and Yuffie would be pretty cool.
Well, like with him, one thing you could do, you could maybe even take it off of his limit break and make the monster transformations more part of his specials, just so you can get more frequent use out of them. And
it'd be cool if he could do like a partial transformation for like a real quick attack or something, where like he just transforms like part of his arm into like a monster part or something. But I feel like Yuffie could be really cool because they could actually emphasize more the fact that she's supposed to be a ninja and make her like really agile and have like, this is where like aerial combat could really be improved by giving her like a lot of jumping around shit to do.
Or just she'll probably throw her boomerang, but on the note of
that, but also use it. I would like them to have it where like she can use it long range and close range.
So on the note of Yuffie, so one thing I was wondering about is how they're going to handle like the progression between between Remake and whatever the next part is. And it's like, are you going to get to keep some of the stuff you had? Like, is it going to read your file and be like, okay.
Yeah, that's something I wanted to discuss too. Like,
is it going to
another question is
one thought I had is, I mean, remember the part where Yuffie steals all your materia?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
What if she's basically the Metroid reset of the next game, where she steals all your shit, and then you find her again, and she's like, "Oh, I sold it," or "Oh, I lost it."
Or she's like, I dropped it. It all fell into the ocean. It's gone.
She stole all your crap, gave you the Metroid reset, and then she lost it, so you can't even get it back. And that's
It
why
doesn't
you
explain
have to start from scratch.
It explains material, but it doesn't explain levels.
I mean, weapons and stuff. Like, basically have her take your weapons and materia, even though how the fuck is she going to carry around like 4 of Cloud's giant swords? But
Hammer
whatever.
Space. I mean, he carries around like all of his giant swords.
Yeah. Pocket dimensions in their pockets.
Yes.
Yeah, I always imagined they just had everything in a giant sack, and like anytime battles start, they just kind of dump it on the ground and do their battle, and then just pick it back up.
It's a very interesting way to look at it.
That's how I always imagined it in my head.
They spend 5 minutes before the fight actually starts, like, shit, where is it? I know it's in here. Shit. Throwing stuff off the pile, digging for it. Hold on, we're getting there. We're gonna fight. Just let us find our shit first.
Now the monsters are doing the same thing. They're carrying a bunch of shit, and they're like, "I could, give us some."
It's like, yeah, they start a temporary truce. Like, hey, God, okay, you guys ready? All right, let's go.
I mean, dude, no, that explains so much, because that explains turn-based combat as a whole. It's like, all right, it's my turn.
It's all just a card game. It's everyone's preparing their decks at the beginning, and then you take your turn.
Jesus fuck, Andy.
It's all just Magic the Gathering. Everything goes back to
God, the revelation's here. What the fuck?
yeah.
It all makes so much sense now.
Square-enix, hire this man. Let him design your games. This person has no experience in anything like that.
Oh man. I think in all seriousness though, like I would hate this, but it's probably just going to be like, the game just starts and you have maybe just some low level stuff and they don't really explain what happened to it. And like, I have my doubts if you'll even be able to transfer your save over, because like the first part was so self-contained that I don't know.
I don't think they're going to start you at level 1, and I think they would, now, not to say that they wouldn't go against this, but I do think they would be dumb to not have some sort of file transfer aspect. But I have a feeling we're going to see, like, what was like the average level you end at in Remake?
I ended at like around like 45.
Yeah.
I ended that, but
So I would wager a guess that the next part is going to start you around, that level, or like level 30 or something. I bet we're not going to see a level 99 cap. I think it's just going to get higher. So like whatever you end at part 2, like you'll start at about 30 or so in part 2, and then whatever you end at in part 2, you'll start around that same level in part 3. And if it like starts crawling up by level 99, I think they're just going to go past it.
I don't know. I could see it going back to level 1, and then like I'm sure. I mean, everyone's gonna have their maybe a few extras to start with, and then I'd imagine you'd probably just start with a couple of basic materia of like different spells like cure and fire and stuff.
yeah, that's how I think it's going to be. Like you'll start at level 1, and they probably you'll learn they'll add new limit breaks and stuff, like maybe bigger limit breaks and stuff for the sequel. So it kind of seems like you're getting stronger than you were in the original, but for gameplay, you'll still start at level 1.
Because 4 had like 4, or the original had like 4 different like sections of limit breaks. I remember that you could like switch between. So like I could see it being something kind of like that, where like you've now moved on to like the second tier of limit breaks.
Yeah.
And you're gonna really like this. This is Super Saiyan level 3.
Oh, shut up.
Super Saiyan ascends past the level of Super Saiyan.
That's what he does. He just throws up.
Random. I got to watch a video of cats reacting to the smell of Durins today. It's funny.
How's that going?
Oh, it was just really funny because like some of them would sniff the durian and then they would like gag, which is something I've never seen an animal do. Like people gag at rotten smells all the time. I've never seen an animal do it. It was funny.
I think cats do it.
But another thing I wanted to talk about was the title. So a large complaint that people have had with Remake is that it is, in fact, not a remake. And people are pissed about this and like, oh, well, I expected it to be what the title says it is.
Well, it
And
depends on your definition of remake.
yeah, here's my 2 cents on this. They're fucking AVing the shit out of it. Remake is not to designate that this is a remake of Final Fantasy VII. Remake is itself the subtitle. The next part is not going to be called Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2. It's going to be called Final Fantasy VII Re-something.
Well, I feel like everyone kind of has it like this like pre-notion. Everyone kind of has this pre-notion of what remake means in like the gaming world, and I feel like you kind of have to step out of that to be like, yeah, this is technically a remake. They're remaking the game. It's still kind of true.
Yeah, I think the subtitle of Remake is meant to be meta, because one thing that stood out to me was, like, when they revealed it as Final Fantasy VII Remake, they didn't say Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2 or Part 1, and if you look at the box, Remake is part of the title. If this was just a remake of FF7, it would be kind of odd for them to include the word remake in the title. So I think the subtitle is more meta, and each part's going to have its own subtitle. Like, part 2 could be reboot or something. The part 3 could be reunion. Part 4, if they do one, could be rebirth. I don't fucking know.
Well, yeah. Well, reunion. The reunion was a big thing in the original game, so yeah, that would work.
I guarantee you, reunion's going to be one of the subtitles, and then probably have like rebuild or something like that. I don't know. I think that's what they're going with. They're going with level subtitles.
I think a lot of people are going to be confused as to where to start, though, if they're just not really familiar with it.
Yeah.
Well,
like other games don't do this either, where they have like, I mean, a lot of things don't like to have like sequel. It's always like title and then subtitle, and yeah, I mean, a lot of things don't always make sense for where you're supposed to start.
Mm-hmm. Well, and plus they're kind of making these parts, like the first part is very self-contained. Maybe they'll probably make the second part so you don't even necessarily have to play the first part first if you don't want to. So, I mean, maybe it's not that big of a deal to them.
I mean, that's kind of, well, I don't think you have to do it this way, because I think gamers are smarter than publishers give them credit for. Mass Effect. But every time. Yeah, I think each game is going to be more self-contained than an entire story. So, like, there'll probably be some sort of recap. I mean, hell, look at it this way. Like, the Yakuza games, those are a really, really fucking long, overarching story. But each game has some self-contained segment of, like, Kiryu's life and whatnot. So,
yeah, it's actually the exact same analogy I was going to make. Like, the way the Yakuza games are formatted.
So, like, you could pretty much do the same thing, or like the Mass Effect 1, 2, 3 formula, where you just give like a small little recap or whatever, and then it's off to the races. Yay!
Yeah.
Also, back on the note of, we touched on this earlier, like how much they're kind of throwing Sephiroth around already, and like he's supposed to be the big final boss and all that, but here he is in the first fucking game, like what is effectively the first 5 hours of the story, and we've already fought him. I don't think Sephiroth's going to be the final boss of the entire thing.
That's kind of what I was saying too earlier. Mostly a realization I just kind of had too, is that it could be something else.
I bet you Genesis is going to come back.
What?
Ooh.
Wait, what was that?
So,
is that Advent Children? What is that?
Nope, it is Crisis Core. It's some fucking nonsense of like early on in the soldier program or whatever, there was like 2 scientists that were competing with each other, there was Hojo, and then some other guy. I don't remember his name.
Hojo and not Hojo.
Yeah, Hojo and not Hojo. So Hojo made Sephiroth, not Hojo made... I'm trying to remember exactly how this played out, because there were 3 people in this. There was Sephiroth, some other dude, and Genesis. And they reference all 3 of them in Remake. Because, like, the part... I can't remember the other guy's name, but they mention, like, 3 different cells. There's S cells, G cells, and then other loser cells. G cells are Genesis, made by not Hojo, and not Hojo was basically all pissy because Sephiroth was turning out to be better than Genesis was, but then Genesis went all fucking lunatic, and then he killed Genesis, but Genesis isn't actually dead. I think he was doing something like he was infecting other people with G cells and turning them into Genesis monsters. Genesis and the other guy do actually show up in a game that Nick has played. They're in Dirge of Cerberus at the very end in the fucking
I don't
cutscene.
remember like anything about that game, though.
Right? I didn't either. Like I said, I looked a bunch of this shit up because I'm like, what is fucking happening here? And yeah, apparently that's what's going on. So I think that's my prediction. I don't know if Genesis is going to be the final boss, but I bet you fucking anything Genesis is going to be in this series. And it's probably going to be dumb, because Genesis is dumb.
Well, like, yeah, I did kind of have the theory that they might cover some of the Crisis Core, some of the events of Crisis Core in the following parts and stuff, so they could expand on
They just stuck to what was in the main game, but it's clear that's not going to be the case.
Well, yeah, seeing as when Zach showed up in the end, it's like, yeah, I think they're probably going to do a little bit more with it.
And yeah,
I mean,
like
it's
I
fine
said,
taking a little bit from other things, but I'd rather it not be something big that is like a key thing to the story.
well, that's why I question, like, who is this game for? Like, I'm enjoying it. I enjoyed playing it because I'm not actively playing it right now. But I'm looking forward to what's going to happen. I'm not thrilled with all of the decisions that were made, but that I still enjoyed it as an overall game, and I want to see where this goes from here. Where the fuck was I going with that?
I don't know.
But yeah, fuck, lost my train of thought. Oh well, podcast over. Rip, we're dead. No.
Well, in all seriousness, we probably should wrap this up soon.
All right, I remember.
But,
so who is this game for?
yeah.
The reason I wonder who it's for is the people who wanted a straight remake will be disappointed. The people who did not experience the first game will be confused. So it seems like the only people who actually enjoy this game or who this game is for, because I enjoyed it, but it's not for me, are the people who are just balls deep in the FF7 compilation, and they are obsessed with everything FF7. Because this is pulling from literally everything FF7, even the fucking weird-ass light novels.
Let me go ahead and say no shit. Like, of course, they're going to make Final Fantasy all about everything that is Final Fantasy VII. Like, it's like...
Well, the reason that's weird to me is because and I do see, like, this is where I will agree with people who are a little upset, because they did say that this is for fans of the old game, as well as people who have never played it.
I keep telling people, like, if you've never played it, I'm like, don't start with this. It's going to just be more confusing to you.
Yeah,
I would still just recommend playing the first one first.
I highly disagree with their statement of this is welcoming to new players, because it's not.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, like, this remake exists, but it's not going to replace the original. It's definitely not meant to replace the original. So
it would be welcoming to
experience both separately.
It'd be welcoming to a new player if they're very open-minded and
willing to just accept things the way they are without having to backtrack through pages and pages of lore on the Wikipedia.
I mean, and there's some people who are okay with that. I can see that working, but that's not a good...
No, it's not.
It's not. But I'm not doubting that those people do exist.
But yeah, well, I guess I guess that's about all we can say for now.
All right,
is what
everyone, give your rating of the game.
I'm not gonna give a number rating because I don't like
I
numbers.
don't like giving number ratings. I just because
Give me-
numbers
give me-
imply that it's of this quality, but really it's going to be a different quality depending on who you are. It's all subjective. So I prefer to just say like what the game is like, what I liked about it, what I didn't like about it, and people can make their own decision from there, whether or not it sounds like their cup of tea.
I'll say this: I'm gonna copy Game Explain, which take them or leaving. They do have a good idea here in their reviews of they don't do numbers. They just say I liked it, I really liked it, it was meh, or I didn't like it, that kind of thing. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna take a page from their book and say I really liked it. I had a ton of fun with it. The gameplay was excellent. Story had its ups and downs. There are things that I really don't like about the story. Didn't completely ruin the game for me, but I'm looking forward to see where this goes.
Yeah,
Well,
that's
so I
basically
will be
my
picking the
opinion too.
I give it a pretty good out of amazing.
It doesn't sound that great though.
It was fun enough to be pretty good. You understand my rating system. See, pretty good means that it's worth your time. If you get down to like okay, like that's a little like less so or just bad, but pretty good means
bad
it's
games,
definitely
I
worth
think are more worth your time than just okay games.
Well, sidebar here. That kind of goes along with why I don't like numbers, but like people harp on 6s and 7s out of 10s,
Yeah.
and I don't think anyone uses them properly because these days a 7 is basically counted as meh, and a 6 and below is counted as trash. And people who write reviews think of it this way too. So they write that in mind. And I don't think that makes any fucking sense because
Yeah,
a 7 is
inflated.
average. Like 7 is average, a 6 is still passing. So people are dumb with numbers.
Donkey has a whole thing
I don't really
about
like
this.
using them.
Like Donkey has a whole thing about these review scores too, because like he still assigns a number, but he's kind of explained how it works, and it makes sense because he does like a 1 to 5 scale, and I mean he's like it's rare for a game to get a 5 because like a 5 out of 5 because that's going to be fucking near perfect, and that's very rare. But like he explains it like 3 and 4 is still like those are worth your time. Those are good games. And I'm like I'm fine with that kind of stuff. I also tend to try to avoid like a specific numbering system because it's just kind of inherently flawed. I prefer to more go by if I enjoyed it or if I didn't enjoy it.
It's flawed and there's weird psychology behind it. Like it's funny you mentioned 5-point reviews because if you look at a 3 out of 5 versus a 6 out of 10, people will inherently believe that the 6 out of 10 is worse.
Well, it has to do with larger numbers, I guess. Because like 3, like with a smaller numbering system, we shouldn't be getting into all this, but like yeah,
all right. That's another episode by itself. Andy, ask your question.
There's less of a give and take there, I guess, when it comes to that stuff. So I get it, but so my question is nothing complicated. I figured it'd be fitting for this one, and it would just be if you could choose any one game, new or old, to get the FF7 treatment, like remake, and not necessarily being all meta and crazy. Just a game that gets remade in modern era with all these like expansions to it. What game would you want to see remade? Shall I start? Give you guys a chance.
I actually have an answer right away.
I have ideas, but not enough to process them into an actual verbal thought. So,
well, Nick,
you guys
if you
go
wanna,
ahead.
If you're gonna go first, Nick, you can do that.
Okay. I mean, honestly, it's probably going to be a bit of a cop-out answer, but it's actually just Final Fantasy VIII because
I'm not surprised.
Because I still think I'm just a big fan of the PS1 Final Fantasies in general, but 8 to me is kind of like if I had to pick a favorite, it would be 8. And it has all the cinematic. It's actually probably more cinematic than the original FF7 was, and there's plenty of room to expand on the lore and stuff. And
it's kind of funny because
I think it would be cool.
Even though 8 isn't as highly regarded, and it's not my favorite, it does feel like a more fitting game to do that to than like FF9, for
Yeah.
example. Like just something about the setting and the way the world works.
Oh yeah, I mean, I love the
Feels
world of 8.
It would
8's
work a lot better.
It's funny too that you say 8, Nick. I kind of figured you would, because I remember when I was watching you play the demo for the FF7 remake, I remember saying like, man, I'd love to see 8 in the same style.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, other about 8, because I've thought about this too. Like, they could, because with the 7 remake, they basically imported the old materia system. Like they could do the same with the junctioning system, but they could probably they would definitely have to make it so you can't break the game like you can in the original, though. Like
Yeah.
that would change I would wholeheartedly welcome. As much as I love breaking the game, like something like that has no place in like modern
oh yeah.
games.
Well, they probably wouldn't have like a
But you
they
could
wouldn't have
still
hard
super
mod
creative
thing and
with it.
stuff.
And they could probably come up with a better way to, instead of the draw system, for stocking magic too. But like, yeah, I still think they could still have the junction system be for the most part intact, and it would be a lot of fun to mess around with in a FF7 remake style game.
Yeah.
Okay, I think I've got my answer. But before I answer, I'm gonna ask you guys what you think I'm gonna say.
I originally, when I first thought of this question, I was assuming that first I thought Nick would say either Earthbound or Final Fantasy VIII, and for you, all I could think of was Chrono Trigger.
Ha.
Yeah, I was going to say Chrono Trigger.
Yes. So I could go at length about that sort of idea, and honestly, the more I think about it, the more I don't think I want that. I'm very torn about the idea of a Chrono Trigger remake, which maybe we can do a whole episode about that kind of thing later. But it did get me thinking. What I would actually like to see is the FF7 remake done on Chrono Cross, more so than Chrono Trigger.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Since
Would they
Chrono
have,
Cross
like, characters and stuff though?
Yeah, that would make it kind of a ridiculous undertaking. But I feel like much in the same way, as much as I'd like to see big fucking giant budget production of FF9 with, flashy combat and shit, I agree with you. I think 8 would work better for that too. But along the same lines, like I could soft answer Chrono Trigger because reasons I won't get into, but the way Chrono Cross works and the way the world works, I think it sets itself up a lot better to that sort of more in-depth expanding upon, and just I think it would work a lot better there.
Yeah, I can really see that.
Like,
It'd be nice too.
Like Chrono Trigger. Oh, sorry, Andy, you can go first.
Yeah, well, I was just gonna say because like Chrono Cross tends to be the more forgotten one because everyone just absolutely goos themselves over Chrono Trigger, and I mean with good reason. It's a great game, but yeah, it would be nice to kind of revisit Chrono Cross.
What I think they should do is, like, if they do remake, they should remake Chrono Trigger, but they should give it like the Trials of Mana treatment, where they don't really change it too much.
I disagree.
But well, then they could take Chrono Cross and give it the FF7 treatment, and that's where they expand on the lore of the world and stuff more. But
yeah, so maybe next time I'll go into my Chrono Trigger rant, but I disagree with your statement. We can go over that another time. Okay. But yeah, I think Cross, because that is something I did want to talk about at some point, was remakes in general. But
yeah, I figured. But
I think Cross would be a better fit for the FF7 remake treatment. Like, if Trigger were to get remade, there's a very, very specific list of demands I have.
Well, I mean, I said FF7 treatment just kind of in a general terms of more.
Yeah, I get you.
We're not going to get whispers in Chrono Trigger. They're not going to be like, you have to go back.
Well, hey, I'll give you this. Whispers would make a hell of a lot more sense in Cross.
Yeah, I was actually just thinking that, like, wow, yeah, that actually would fit that so much better.
They're practically part of the lore as it is. Well, Andy, you posed the question. Your turn.
It's funny, God, like, because of course I knew that the answer would be RPGs, just because those are kind of RPGs always going to be the most beloved to most people. just because they're so much longer games that you get attached to. And it's funny too that because like Nick says FF8 and you went with Chrono Cross, because for me, of course, you'd think either like Earthbound or FF9, and I agree FF9 would not really work in this way quite so much. And I was thinking Mother 3. I would like I don't know how it would work exactly because like I don't have any ideas of what it would be like, and I don't know if I necessarily would like to see them expand on stuff because some of the things I like about Mother 3 is the unexplained, but I would love to see like a modernization, like 3D kind of stuff with it.
Dude, the best part about how David chooses Chrono Cross instead of Chrono Trigger, like I feel like Mother 3 would be a little bit better suited for it than Earthbound would be.
Yeah, the best part about this is like how fucking predictable we are to each other because you started on the train of Earthbound and then it immediately clicked with me. He's gonna say Mother 3, isn't he? And it's like along the same fucking lines as what I just said, and that's really funny.
Maybe if I liked Mother 1 more, I probably would want that because that definitely could use a lot of modernization to it. Because it was very difficult playing through the original one because old school RPGs are really hard. But the thing is, like, I thought about Earthbound, and yeah, like if they expanded anything, it would ruin it because part of the fun of Earthbound is that it's all about the journey. You don't need a story for Earthbound. It's the adventure, and I feel like if they expanded on that and started putting in all the story shit for the characters, it would just take so much away from it.
Well, I think the interesting thing about you picking Mother 3 and like why my mind wandered to it and how that you think about it kind of does make sense, and a lot of that actually is because of the one little tweak that was done to the combat system, the rhythm thing.
Yes.
And it feels like, that wasn't in the other games, so doing the whole bigger, better just blowout of that, expanding on that combat system and turning it into some like sort of pseudo real time or just whatever the fuck. It feels like there's more room to do something like that.
Yeah.
Just because of that one little addition.
Well, in my mind, I turn into a child with this because I imagine like the combat where like it'd be like the FF7 where like you're switching with people because I imagine like, playing as Lucas and like smacking someone with a bat and then like switching to Duster real fast and like doing a bunch of kicks and throwing like the fucking giant staple shit at them and just like I imagine that just being really cool to look at.
Yeah, and they could still somehow incorporate the rhythm stuff into it too.
Yeah, like do beat or Crypt of the Necrodancer like have a rhythm meter at the bottom and time your attacks to that, like.
Or, I mean, the rhythm stuff could be for, like, specific, like, bigger attacks or something.
Yeah, that's another thing I thought, like, you could just have special attacks that, maybe they start breakdancing, like, Duster could start breakdancing with his feet and stuff, and you'd have to be like this crazy music playing and stuff.
Yeah, that'd be pretty cool. I like your answers.
I like your style.
My style is impetuous.
You're not Alexander. Wait, to say the great? I forget already.
The quote was, the guy will say, "I'm Alexander the Great," and then "You're not Alexander" is what they say to Gene.
Okay, so I did have it right. Oh man, no, we need that game needs a remake.
Another time, Andy. Another time. We have things to do.
All right, guys. Well, it is getting kind of late for me, so
good show. Good show, lads.
Good show.
Yeah. Nice talking to you guys about this. Getting some stuff off our chest, hearing all these theories is always fun.
Come on and join us some more times in the future, Nick. You're always
I told you you'd like it, Nick. I told you.
Yeah, I think you got me sold on it. Since nobody at my work plays any of the same games I do. They're all about their shooters and sports games and stuff.
Yeah,
so
I have my Josh now.
Stuff anymore. So
I have my Josh now at work, though he's not quite like Josh. He's probably less annoying.
Yeah, there's also Josh who doesn't really play many of these games either. Like he's probably the closest one though.
Anyway, let's wrap this shit up. I need a place to cut this. And boy.
Uh-oh. 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 Uh-oh.